Hebron, and Jaffa, Tel Aviv. I will leave it to Shokat and Andrew to elaborate on what they saw on their trip and the conclusions that they have drawn. But briefly, I'll do some housekeeping. So Wi-Fi is on the back table. The fire exits are here and here. In terms of the structure, each MP, and there'll be a roaming mic during the Q&A as well that our colleague will give to you. When you ask questions during the Q&A, please state your name and outlet. So initially, Shokat and Andrew will give two pre-prepared statements. Will be followed by questions from the floor, and then we'll open up to one-to-ones, and you can speak to me to arrange that as the Q&A finishes, and we should finish up around 12 o'clock. So that is everything for now. First, we'll hear from Andrew George.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Well, it was an enormous privilege to be given the opportunity and to be invited to visit West Bank, Jerusalem, Israel, the occupied territories. I mean, I've not been before, and indeed, as a member of Parliament for West Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, which you may think doesn't have many connections with the Middle East, it was an enormous privilege, as I say, to go. But also, it was noted that I've been increasingly drawn into the debate about the situation there, and certainly constituents are increasingly concerned. And you may think that although it isn't on our doorstep, it certainly is in people's minds and concern about what is going on. So the opportunity to examine the situation close to quarters was something which I seized. And of course, we knew the score before we went. I mean, my most recent remarks in the chamber about the situation in Gaza in particular had been widely reported in Israeli press in quite a prominent way just a week before I arrived with my photograph. So I was kind of rather anxious about the impact that itself may have. But given what Jonathan explained about two of our honourable friends being detained and then deported just a week before, obviously we were anxious. So we knew the score. Our primary aim, of course, was to avoid deportation and then to come back alive. I mean, we went, and obviously we succeeded in both those two objectives. Our visit was based on a shared belief perspective that seeking a peaceful solution to the crises, the conflicts, and the clear discrimination is in the interests of both Israelis and Palestinians, and that sustainable, peaceful coexistence is not just desirable, and certainly we think that despite the extremely difficult circumstances we witnessed, we believe that it is possible. We're not suggesting that as backbench MPs who've not been to the country before, that somehow we're going to have some magical blinding flash of inspiration which has somehow bypassed all of the experts, academics, international statespeople who have studied and worked on the region over decades before, but clearly coming there with fresh eyes itself, I think, does provide us with, if you like, a new opportunity to see things for the first time, and also to contribute to the discourse here in the Westminster debates. And I as I say, I wouldn't ever attempt to say that we think that we have greater wisdom. I mean, certainly there are far finer minds than mine. I exclude Shokat from this, who's got a finer mind than me, to be able to identify what the great opportunities are. I mean, the background to the international, of all the international crises, my constituents consistently view the distressing situation in Gaza, the West Bank, and Israel as the epicenter of what is perceived a wider world conflict, and are anxious the UK government constructively supports peace initiatives, the return of the remaining hostages, of course, ending the conflict, the killing, and are desperate to believe there is a route to deliver lasting peace in the region. I've said that my constituency doesn't have significant, or you might not think it has very significant connections with the region. I mean, although I have family members through marriage who have Israeli heritage, including those who actually served in the IDF, and not directly, but family members, and have lived in the Israeli state. So I'm aware of their perspective and have discussed these issues with them before. But also the tragedy extends to our own back door in West Cornwall, following the murder of Jim Henderson, who was serving with the World Central Kitchen just over a year ago when they were murdered by the IDF. I say that word quite deliberately. Just over a year ago, he was one of 7 members of that charity who were killed doing work in Gaza, and an investigation has been promised. But certainly, I mean, he was known to us in West Cornwall. I mean, not a close pal of mine, but certainly well enough through sporting connections and others to be aware of just how much impact that had on the area, and it affected people who were watching and following what was going on in the region. We were invited to spend last week visiting the West Bank of Israel, hosted by the International Centre for the Justice for Palestinians, who were obviously working hard to promote peace in the Middle East. And it was an honour to be accompanied by Shokat, who you'll hear from in a minute. You've already heard that, of course, the context of our two honourable colleagues who were deported the week before. As we went into the country, we're kind of half expecting to be deported. We'd made representations to the Foreign Office because we were anxious to obviously give ourselves the best chance. And when at the border, I was sent back in Tel Aviv and detained. I'd already made contact with the consulate and contacted them immediately. And I obviously don't know what, if anything, happened, but certainly I was ultimately permitted entry after a short wait of just less than an hour. We met very many pleasant Israeli and Palestinian people, medics, Knesset members, lawyers, human rights campaigners, refugees, as well as, of course, many checkpoint soldiers, police, security guards, and settlers. We recognise that we are merely the latest in a substantial stream of thousands of politicians, academics, campaigners, diplomats, and think tanks, which have reviewed the unacceptable and unsustainable situation in the region, seeking a peaceful resolution after decades of conflict, and perhaps the very worst of all conflicts presently in Gaza must be for the benefit, clearly, of both Israelis and Palestinians. Achieving this will clearly require, first of all, a major political change from that presently being pursued, including an ending or rejection of the mutually exclusive belief that there are divine rights or there's something subject to a holy mission, and secondly, of course, Herculean diplomatic effort. Amongst other things, someone coming at it fresh, I found that the whole kind of lexicon of toxic linguistic kind of battlefields that surround this highly contested kind of debate and concern conflict is kind of critical, and so there's a minefield for us as politicians and the unwary to use terminology to describe a situation, A words and G words and other words, which describe the situation which is in some people's minds kind of unacceptable, will draw one, distract one away from the primary purpose of why we were there. I was struck by how segregated the society is, especially in the West Bank, and I note that official bodies like the International Court of Justice have chosen to use the word apartheid to describe the state of affairs across the country. I mean, I don't myself feel qualified to make such a formal judgment myself, and indeed the toxic environment in which such terms are used, I'm less sure that which nouns and adjectives best describe the circumstances we observed. I can only factually describe what I saw. And there appear to be broadly two communities of people. Group A decide what this is, live in relative prosperity with the facilities of a modern, well-heeled Western society, whether by law or convention, they appear to enjoy distinct and better health services, schools, public services, travel on better buses and trains, and have full democratic rights to vote for their government. And then there is Group B, which have severely limited opportunities, significant restrictions to their rights and freedoms, and have no right to vote for the government, which determines most of their rights and manages their quality of life. There's also the ownership of language and terminology. The conflict is also hampered by a control co-option of terminology used, and this is not just mere semantics. I mean, a stark example is the term settlers, which is perennially used on both sides of this debate to describe those Israelis who use force and intimidation to illegally take over valuable land, buildings and real estate from Palestinians and in Palestinian territories. And often it seems that with state financial tax inducements and with the protection and assistance of state institutions, the police and the IDF. Settler implies, according to most dictionaries, a passive, even benign act of arrival in a new place which may have been unoccupied or underoccupied by others. Considering the acts of Israelis in the West Bank, intruders or evictors would be a more accurate term to describe the disruptive actions and coercive behavior which result in the advance of these settlements, and then the walls and barriers that are then constructed to ensure that those who've been evicted stay out of these places and have their rights restricted. We also witnessed one exchange between two settlers in southern West Bank, where they rudely and threateningly offered to buy a property from a local Palestinian we were being hosted by at the time, and firmly informed the resident, words to the effect, if you don't sell it to us now, we'll take it anyway very soon, it's up to you. And that seemed to be something which they could say with absolute impunity at the same time as there were, of course, military checkpoints overseeing all of the area which we were looking at. I mean, overall, one might take the view that what hope is there for the Palestinians in their own land, and I have to say I came away with, in spite of that, there was many Palestinians who still held on to crumbs of hope and wanted to try and work with that, and certainly some refugees who had been evicted from their refugee camp in Tel Karm on the first day that we were there in the north, told us that they still, in spite of the fact of recent eviction, they still had hope that they could get back to their refugee camp. They saw that as an ambition in their lives, and ultimately get back to Haifa, from which their community originally came pre-1948. And although there was a lot of youthful energy in that place, which one worries about the young people who've been evicted in those circumstances with insufficient things to do, and lots of time and energy on their hands. But seeking a peaceful resolution is something which we constantly came back to in our conversations with people there. Achieving this will require major political change and Herculean diplomatic effort. I don't believe that we were selectively led while we were there. We spoke to a good range of campaigners, human rights activists and politicians. On balance, people we spoke to, this is one learning lesson for me, were less persuaded by the parroting of the proposed two-state solution. Many felt that, as they put it, that boat has already sailed, it's too late. And we're arguing that the concept is no longer helpful, plausible, or achievable. I mean, I've advocated it myself, along with many others in the Westminster village. But having now visited the region, I can see why some feel it's a waste of political energy, nor the best focus for the energies of those who are determined to secure long-term peace. It creates a veneer of purposefulness, which seems a too far off and unachievable prospect, and a platitudinous waste of words in the ears of Palestinians, and a red rag to many Israelis. I floated an alternative concept while I was there, which is just one letter change, which is to suggest a two-stage solution, where there will be no resolution to the conflict until the segregated and discriminatory, may wish to use another word to describe that, segregated and discriminatory state is dismantled and for full democracy to be established, so votes for all, which isn't the case at present, and it would be based on votes for all, including, of course, all Palestinians in a general election, and a truth and reconciliation process to follow to decide, should it be two states, one state, what other combination should it be? And then to support this, and this is the message which we want to take back to the UK government, we want them to promote equality, equal rights and votes for all, and to hear them say it, to encourage Israel to adopt a path to peace and to adopt sanctions, especially back legal settlements until it does, agree that both Palestinians and Israelis have equal entitlement to self-determination, stroke statehood. I mean, recognizing the state of Palestine is one of the kind of calls that is made, but actually recognizing the right of Palestinians to self-determination statehood is a stepping stone on the way to that recognition, and surely the government must accede to that one. Stop all arms sales, arms licenses, and sanction those who stoke conflict on either side of the debate, and that obviously includes extremist ministers like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich. But I hope that those remarks are helpful. I know that Shokat has additional comments to make, more thoughtful than mine. Thank you very much. Right.
Thank you, Andrew. Shokat Adam will speak next.
Hi, good morning, everyone. First of all, I'd just like to thank all of you for attending and giving this situation the gravitas that it deserves. I'd also like to thank ICJP for organizing our trip, and I think they betted on themselves that we wouldn't get in, so I think they've lost a lot of money on that. And I'd also like to thank Andrew for tolerating me for a week, but I'd like to say a special thank you to both Palestinians and Israelis that we met. I think they were very brave, because some of them were putting their life on the line, if not their life, then certainly their lifestyle. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank them. What I'm about to describe, what myself and Andrew has seen, has been happening for decades. It's not new. But I think one term that we heard consistently whilst we were there is that it's got much worse since October the 7th. So everything has been expedited, everything has been amplified. Indeed, just speaking to a colleague here before from Jerusalem, that every time she goes back, she notices a difference, but the rate of the differences has been expedited. It seems that the world's attention rightfully has been on Gaza for 18 months, the massacres, the destruction, the complete genocide of the people there. And in that, whilst that's been happening, it almost seems that an opportunity has been taken to amplify and expedite the situation in the West Bank. So that is something that I think is really, really important to point out, because it was mentioned to me by virtually everybody that we met. We witnessed firsthand a glimpse of what it must be like to be a Palestinian. It was relentless, it was humiliating. I felt the people were dehumanized. And unfortunately, a sentiment that I felt, that there was an erosion of hope. It was very difficult by the end of any hope of how the situation can be resolved. But I certainly feel that if the international community does not intervene in the situation in the West Bank, there's going to be a humanitarian catastrophe akin to what we saw in Gaza, what we are seeing in Gaza. And the repercussions of what is happening is going to be indiscriminate and disproportionate, and it's not only going to affect the Palestinians, the Israelis, the local region, but the global diaspora. The whole world is going to be affected. And I sincerely believe that if we do not intervene as soon as we can. So I just want to go through a few aspects of the trip. And first is the witnessing of the restriction of movement, the physical liberty of the Palestinian people. Now, we've all heard that Gaza is often called the world's largest open-air prison. But in the West Bank too, Palestinians are not just only imprisoned by their walls that we have seen for now many decades, but we have seen the checkpoints increasing its frequency and its numbers. So a half-an-hour journey is now taking people 4 hours on average. But one really disturbing feature that we